The thief-maker tried to let a vaguely sincere expression scurry onto his face, where it froze in evident discomfort. His shrug was theatrically casual. There are problems with the boy, yes, but the problems are unique to his situation in my care. Were he under yours, I'm sure they would vanish. Oh, you have a magic boy. Why didn't you say so? The priest scratched his forehead beneath the white silk blindfold that covered his eyes. Magnificent! I'll plant him in the ground and grow a vine to an enchanted land beyond the clouds. I've tasted that flavor of sarcasm before, Chains. The thief-maker gave an arthritic mock brow. That's the sort you spit out as a bargaining posture. Is it really so hard to say that you're interested? The eyeless priest shrugged. Suppose Kalo, Galdo, and Sabetha might be able to use a new playmate, or at least a new punching bag. Suppose I'm willing to spend about 3 coppers in a bowl of piss for a mystery boy. But you'll still need to convince me that you deserve the bowl of piss. What's the boy's problem? His problem, said the thief-maker, is that if I can't sell him to you, I'm going to have to slit his throat and throw him in the bay. And I'm going to have to do it tonight. The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch is perhaps one of the most enjoyable books I've ever had the chance to read. I am naturally a sucker for the rogue character archetype, and Locke Lamora might be the chiefest among all rogues. He, Tyrion Lannister, and Sandan Glokta are some of my favorite characters that I think I've ever read, but Scott Lynch brings a completely different approach to this character. He is more uncut, more raw, and more unpredictable than any other roguish character I think I've ever read. And it's all mixed up in this bag of beautiful prose and mystery and intrigue, and he writes everything in such a way that I don't ever know what's going to happen next. And so the entire time I feel like Locke is the most clever human being I've ever read in my entire life. And it starts out at the very beginning when we realize that he's going to have to be killed as a boy of 5 because he's nearly burnt down an entire city block. Here's the thing about writing a rogue character like Locke Lamora. It is difficult to make the reader fall in love with your protagonist if your protagonist is naturally a bad person, for lack of a better term. And Locke Lamora is no saint. And more often than not, the rogue character in these types of stories isn't. But it makes it difficult to fall in love with a character like that. In Locke's case, from the very outset, he is a character that is getting into trouble. That is, nobody wants him. He's an outcast. And he's an outcast not because he just brings problems, but because he just can't help himself, which is so fun to read because it's so compulsive that he must do all the things that he does. Not compulsive because of mental illness, but because it's fun. Writing thieving as fun makes for a lighter touch to this sort of story, which is probably what it needed to be successful. If Locke and his gentleman bastards were dour, brooding types, but were also rogues and also thieving, it would be very difficult to fall in love with them as characters. But because they're so bright and their view of the world is so lighthearted, and thieving is not seen as an evil thing, sure, they understand what they're doing. It's sort of the Robin Hood approach to thieving. We steal from the rich, but we don't give it to the poor. We keep it for ourselves. But it's brought up many times throughout the book that they're like the Joker in a sense. They're a dog chasing cars. They wouldn't know what to do with one if they caught one. And it's so fascinating to read because while the Joker in The Dark Knight is a character that is pure chaos, that is unleashed upon Gotham, and Batman has to deal with this chaos that the Joker releases, Locke and his gentleman bastards in Lies of Locke Lamora are also chaos, but in a lighter, less let's expose the underworld kind of tone. A similar character written from the opposite, lighter perspective, which is so intriguing to read because while the Joker in The Dark Knight wants to leave the world in perpetual chaos, Locke and his gentleman bastards leave the world in chaos, but they do it with the approach of, Let's have the most freaking fun we can have while we're on planet Earth. One thing that Scott Lynch does very well is that he juxtaposes his protagonists while being not morally upstanding individuals. He juxtaposes them with the people that they're robbing, showing that there's always a bad guy out there that you should hate more than Locke, which kind of gives this contrast between the antagonists and our protagonists. While our protags are not lovable people outside of their humor, outside of their wit, naturally they're bad people. They are thieves, and they do this on a huge scale, stealing money from some of the richest people in the city in which they live. While they're doing all this thieving, the antagonist of the story is pure evil, which stresses all of their resources and all their connections in order to defeat. It's the kind of evil that it needs to create the concoction that Locke can't ignore it, because Locke and his band of gentlemen bastards, Locke, Jean, Kalo and Galdo, and their little apprentice Bug, they steal for the fun of it, but they also have a set of morals, a sliding scale of things that will grab their attention. And the Grey King is a character that the gentlemen bastards run into that is a pure, unyielding evil. He is black and white. He does what he does for specific reasons. And the reason that conflict works is because Locke and his group of gentlemen bastards, his group of thieves, they juxtapose with the antagonists in a way that's incredibly believable and entirely convincing. Now, I think the secret to a rogue character, what Locke is there needs to be humor in his character. Characters like this are tough to pull off if it's just thieving, but there's not a fun twist to it. You think of authors like Joe Abercrombie and George R.R. Martin. When they have written their roguish characters, it's usually with a bend of a nihilistic view of the world. For example, Tyrion Lannister and Sandang Locke, they have physical imperfections that limit them from experiencing the world like you or I would. And through those imperfections, they have a jaded view of things, a nihilistic view of things that then leads them to have a jaded view of people, money. Anything that could sway those characters is irrelevant because they don't fear death, and they've suffered so much in their life that anything you could sway them with is worthless in their eyes. Whereas Locke is entirely a different sort of rogue. While he can't be swayed, it's not because he has a nihilistic view of the world. In fact, I think he has a rather optimistic view of the world. He's so singularly focused on his capers, his jobs that he's working, and he does them not for a nihilistic gain or to prove a point to any social hierarchy. He does them because they're just fun, because it's what he's made to do. And it sort of lends itself to being like, they're breaking the law and they're ruining people's lives, but that doesn't matter because it's characters having fun. I think the other thing that Scott Lynch does with Lies of Locke Lamora is that he creates unique ways for his characters to achieve their goals. Often in stories, you find it most difficult as a writer to create unique ways for your characters to get what they want. Often it can be predictable for people reading your stories, or you can just contrive things for the character to do so that you can achieve your main goal. And what Scott Lynch does is he does achieve his main goals, and in that sense, Lies of Locke Lamora is a resounding success of a novel, but he doesn't do it in the most typical of senses. He will set things up in the past that will lead to moments of aha or eureka moments when all of a sudden you understand why Locke is doing what he's doing, or there's little tidbits that can be dropped like, oh, maybe this one thing will happen in this next chapter. He lays out his events, and in between the main points, little things will be foreshadowed, but they're not foreshadowed until right when you need them. And so things feel like they're coming at you left and right, and you're not sure exactly how they're gonna play out. In particular, there's one moment when they have no means to impersonate, to act. He has nothing he can pull on to pull off a caper, a job. What he needs is he needs a suit, a fancy set of clothes. He needs something that he can wear to sell the lie that he is telling. He goes through an enormous undertaking in order to get a fancy set of clothes that, maybe if he were to just go into a local shop, he could steal them off the rack, but that would be too easy and that would be too boring. What Scott Lynch does is he has Locke show off how intelligent he is by trying and failing multiple times and creating workarounds for the problems that he's encountering. And this happens through a set of scenes, probably 3 or 4 times, where Locke tries and fails, but is learning and changing and adapting to a situation the more he fails, until ultimately he succeeds in his goal and gets what he needs. And that is perfect writing of character. The characters do things of their own volition in a way that feels true to those characters, such that when you read them, you think, oh my God, this is a real person and they're doing something that I could not myself do. Or it makes you think, that was a phenomenal character. I wonder if I would have done what they did in that set of circumstances. The thing with Locke Lamora is that he is a rogue and he's begotten a lot of rogues after him. Books like The Blacktongue Thief by Christopher Buehlman that have come out since Locke Lamora was written they harken back to that type of character. They create newer versions of Locke. And I think Locke is sort of what a Tyrion Lannister is sort of what a Sandang Glocta is, but is a new age version of the rogue, even though Locke Lamora was written in 2006. And was contrived in Scott Lynch's brain far before that. The character of Locke is so unique, and it's like he's an unstoppable force. He's a hurricane. He's the thorn of Camor. I had so much fun reading The Lies of Locke Lamora, to the point that I feel like I could pull so much from Scott Lynch's writing. It's so beautiful. It's so well done. The plot is incredibly tight. It's a book where I feel like everything Scott Lynch could have set out to do, he did, and he created a set of characters that are so likable in the process that I think he rewrote the rogue character as an archetype. And I don't think it's any surprise that The Lies of Locke Lamora is considered one of the best fantasy novels ever written. It is personally my favorite book that I've read so far in 2022, and I'm now gonna dive into the rest of the Gentleman Bastard sequence, and I cannot wait to read the next installments. Let me know down in the comments if you agree with my assessment of Locke Lamora as a character, and has he reset the rogue archetype? Is Locke Lamora a character that you can't get enough of as you read him? That'll be all for me, and I will see you in the next one. I don't know why. What is this? What is this? I don't know.